I can't believe you'd speak to my mother like that, Mark. You're humiliating yourself. The words weren't just hers, they were loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. I was staring at my wife Emily in the middle of Ruth's Steakhouse in downtown Indianapolis, with half the dining room glancing over their martinis, pretending not to eavesdrop. Her father leaned back in his chair like he'd just won something. Her mother crossed her arms, smug in a way that burned right through me. Before we get deeper into this story, make sure you're subscribed, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're listening from. I read everyone. My name is Mark Ellison. I'm 38 years old, born and raised in Bloomington, Indiana. I'm a project director for a national construction firm, and I've built my life and career from the ground up, swinging hammers before I could afford suits. I've never been in trouble. I've never been a liar. And until this year, I thought I'd never be divorced. I married Emily 5 years ago. She was warm, quick-witted, and the kind of person who could make an entire room laugh without trying. But when you marry someone, you marry their family too, and hers came with a price I didn't see coming. It started small. Emily's parents, Robert and Diane, were opinionated. I chalked it up to generational differences at first. They'd slip in comments at Sunday dinners. Mark, I'm not sure that's how real families do it, or you work too much, maybe Emily wouldn't need to feel so alone. I'd let them pass. I figured if I showed respect, they'd return it. But over the next year, their little jabs became full sentences, then full stories. And those stories began traveling to cousins, to church friends, to Emily's coworkers. I learned about them the way you hear about the weather, in overheard conversations, casual, "Oh, I heard," remarks. Apparently I was controlling. Apparently I wouldn't let Emily see her family enough. Apparently I made her cry every night. None of it was true. But the thing about lies is, they don't need to be true, they just need to be repeated. The night at Ruth's was the breaking point. Emily's mom had accused me, in front of a table of 12, half family, half their friends, of belittling Emily during our vacation to Destin. She said I'd ruined the whole trip by complaining about the cost of the condo. Here's the truth. I'd paid for the condo. In full, and I'd done it so Emily's parents wouldn't have to. When I tried to calmly correct Diane, she raised her voice. "Oh, now you're calling me a liar in front of everyone?" she said, loud enough that the waiter froze mid-step. Emily just sat there. Then she sided with them. And that's how I found myself, in a room full of strangers, painted as the villain in my own marriage. On the drive home, the silence between us was heavier than the winter air outside. I remember gripping the wheel, watching the stoplights turn red, then green, then red again, and feeling like they weren't for traffic at all. They were signals for the life I thought I had. What I didn't know that night was that this wasn't the end. It was the setup. Her parents weren't just rewriting the story. They were about to publish the final chapter without me in it. After the Ruth's Steakhouse disaster, I thought Emily and I could talk it out privately. I'd been in tense negotiations with city councils and corporate boards. Surely I could navigate a marriage conflict. But with Emily, the problem wasn't logic. It was repetition. 2 weeks later, we were at her cousin's baby shower in Carmel, Indiana. A sunny Saturday, the kind of Midwest spring day that tricks you into thinking winter's gone for good. I was holding a paper plate of pasta salad when Diane swooped in, touching my arm lightly like she wanted a word in private. Instead, she said, loud enough for 3 other relatives to hear, "Emily told me you didn't want her coming to this, but I'm glad she stood her ground." It was said like a joke, but with Diane, jokes had teeth. Emily was across the yard, laughing with her aunt. I caught her eye, hoping for a quick "that's not true," but she looked away. That's when I realized she wasn't defending me anymore. She was agreeing with them, or worse, repeating them. By June, it was showing up everywhere. At a neighbor's barbecue. "You're lucky Emily keeps you social, Mark. You'd never leave the house otherwise." At her church group luncheon. "He controls all the money. She has to ask for gas money." At her parents' 4th of July party. Well, Mark's not much of a family man, but at least he tries. I'd built my reputation on integrity. In construction, you don't survive without it. I was the guy who delivered projects on time and under budget because I told the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. And now, in my personal life, the narrative was flipping, not because I changed, but because someone else was holding the pen. By August, Emily started quoting her parents during our arguments. "Maybe they're right," she said one night in our kitchen, standing by the sink while I loaded the dishwasher. "You are too critical. You always point out what I do wrong, but never what I do right. I froze, plate in hand. Emily, I tell you, you're amazing all the time. You just don't hear it when it's not in their script. That word, script, set her off. You think my parents are controlling me? That's insulting, Mark. They care about me. Maybe you could learn something from them. It was like talking to a stranger in my wife's skin. In September, they pulled their boldest move yet. We were invited to a dinner at the Meridian, an upscale restaurant on the north side of Indy, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who recite the specials from memory. Emily told me it was just us and her parents. It wasn't. When we arrived, there were 8 other people there, extended family, a few of their friends, even Emily's old high school boyfriend. And the first thing Diane said, before I'd even sat down, was, "Everyone, this is Mark. The reason Emily's been so stressed lately." There was polite laughter. And then, like clockwork, the little barbs came out between courses. About my temper, about my inflexibility, about how I don't know how to have fun. By dessert, I'd stopped speaking altogether. It wasn't silence out of defeat. It was silence out of calculation. When we got home that night, I told Emily I wasn't doing this anymore. Doing what? She asked, walking into ambushes. Her face hardened. Mark, if you can't handle being around my family without feeling attacked, maybe you're not the man I thought you were. The next morning, she slept in. I went for a run through our neighborhood, the crisp air stinging my lungs. Somewhere between mile 2 and 3, it hit me. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing my name. By November, I'd get my answer on just how far they'd take it, and I'd start planning exactly how to take something back. It was the week before Thanksgiving when Emily's parents invited us to dinner at their house in Zionsville. I almost didn't go. By then, my stomach tightened at the thought of any family gathering, but Emily insisted. They just want to make peace, she said, standing by the front door with her coat half-zipped. Can we please try? Try. That word had been my entire marriage for the past year, so I tried one more time. Their house was warm when we walked in. The smell of rosemary chicken and fresh bread, the kind of dinner that looks like care but tastes like control. Robert shook my hand with a politician's grip, smiling just wide enough for the others to see. We sat down at the long oak table. The first 20 minutes were polite enough, and I started to think maybe I'd been wrong, maybe tonight really was about peace. Then Diane cleared her throat. Before we eat, she said, there's something we'd like to share with everyone. She glanced at Emily. Emily didn't look at me. Diane continued, Emily has decided it's time to move on. From this marriage, it landed like a dropped glass. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I stared at Emily. You're announcing our divorce? Over dinner? Diane jumped in before she could answer. We didn't want you to feel blindsided, Mark, but Emily needs to do what's best for her and, frankly, for everyone who cares about her. The others shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, eyes darting anywhere but mine. Emily finally spoke. It's not working. You've been difficult, and I can't live like that anymore. It was the word difficult that did it. Not cruel, not abusive, just difficult. The kind of word that can mean anything you want it to. And in that moment, I realized this was the story they'd been writing all along. Every jab, every public dig, every innocent comment, they'd been building a case. Not in court, but in the court of public opinion. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I didn't defend myself in front of them. I picked up my napkin, set it neatly beside my plate, and stood. Enjoy your meal, I said quietly. Then I walked out the front door, down their perfectly shoveled driveway, and into the cold November night. That weekend, I got served. No surprises, they'd been planning it for months. The papers were clean, the terms skewed in her favor. I could have fought it hard, gone for every ugly detail, but that's not the kind of man I am. Still, I'm not the kind of man who lets someone burn down his reputation without consequences. So while Emily and her parents celebrated their fresh start, I went to work, quietly, methodically, with the same patience I used to see a 2-year construction project through from blueprint to ribbon cutting. By January, I knew exactly how I'd even the score. Not with shouting, not with gossip, but with proof and timing. January in Indiana has a particular kind of cold, the kind that makes every breath feel like you're inhaling glass. That's what the first weeks after the divorce felt like. Sharp, bitter, hard to breathe. I went to work like normal, met deadlines, led project meetings. On the outside, I was steady. Inside, I was building something else. A case, not in court, but in reality. The truth was easy to find. Old emails from Emily thanking me for covering her parents' overdue mortgage payments. Screenshots of her texting me during family dinners, begging me to keep my cool because her mom was starting again. Receipts for every vacation I paid for, every emergency bill I'd covered for her parents. It wasn't petty. It was proof. And I didn't need to throw it into the void. I just needed to place it where it would hurt most. In March, I got word through a mutual acquaintance that Robert was up for a prestigious local business award. A big one, the kind where your reputation has to be spotless. I also learned Diane was trying to land a board position at a local charity that prided itself on integrity and transparency. So I sent quiet, polite emails. Not accusations, just documentation, to the award committee. I thought you'd want to know more about the nominee's financial history before making a final decision. These transactions might be relevant. To the charity board. Since your mission emphasizes honesty, I felt it was my duty to share verifiable information regarding one of your potential members. No exaggeration, no lies. Just their own actions in black and white. 2 weeks later, Robert's award nomination was withdrawn without explanation. The charity quietly chose another candidate. And in the same week, a local news outlet, the kind that loves a public scandal, picked up the story of a family who used their son-in-law's money to fund their lifestyle while spreading false abuse rumors. They didn't use names, but in our town, everyone could do the math. Emily tried calling after that. 3 times I didn't answer. The 4th time, she left a voicemail. You've ruined my parents' lives, Mark. And people are looking at me differently now. Are you happy? I didn't respond. Happiness had nothing to do with it. This wasn't revenge out of spite. It was correction. Balance. By summer, I'd rebuilt my life. Bought a house just outside the city, overlooking a quiet stretch of Eagle Creek Reservoir. One evening, I was grilling on the back deck when I got a text from a friend who still moved in Emily's old social circle. Saw your ex's parents at the farmer's market. Nobody would talk to them. Looked like they couldn't get out of there fast enough. I poured myself a drink, sat back, and let that image settle in. Not with glee, not with bitterness. Just with the steady calm of a man who'd survived the fire and watched the arsonists burn their own house down. The best part? I never had to raise my voice. They wrote my downfall in pen, but I rewrote theirs in stone. And stone doesn't fade. If you enjoyed this story, please give a thumbs up to the video and consider subscribing to the channel for more powerful true life stories.